levels, and they go from sort of like the most extreme polarized to almost not polarized. And so I just want to go through just briefly talking about the levels. Level 1, and it's just 3 things. It's just so obvious as soon as you hear it. It's like the phrase here is, they're the enemies. The other side is the enemy. And that they view, their underlying view, they think they're the enemy because those people want to harm the country. Or they may, or whatever they are doing is going to harm the country. One way or the other, they're the enemy. Okay? And that the underlying emotion of people in this group, level 1 polarization, I say, it's basically hatred. I mean, they hate the other side. I had someone who was a friend of Julie, where she was talking, and she said, yeah, I can deal with what's going on, and I know everything, but I don't know what to do about the hatred I have. She actually acknowledged that, which is very interesting. Now, there's another level. There's level 2 polarization, we call it, which is just the other side, they're just deplorable, okay? And the view is that they're just ignorant or shallow, and they should know better. And that emotion, the underlying feeling behind that toward the other group is one of disdain. It's like, so it's not hatred, but it's still looking down, disdain. The third level is just the sense that those people over there, they've been duped. They've been fooled into believing what they think. And I'm hoping you're all thinking like you can categorize. Oh yeah, I know people like that. that have that attitude. They're you may be well-meaning, but you've been fooled. And that attitude, like for the underlying emotion, is one of pity for them. They just need to be educated. They need to find out that they're doing something against their own self-interest. We've all heard that phrase. Why do they vote against their own self-interest? It's like a sense of pity. Level 4 is where the phrase kind of characterizing that is they have something to contribute on the other side. They actually see that they have something to contribute. And the underlying view here is that they have valid points. They just have a flawed perspective, but their points are kind of valid. And although respect isn't necessarily an emotion, but the underlying feeling there is basic respect. And level 5 polarization, which obviously we're trying to move people down this way. Level 5 polarization is the phrase is their contributions are important and necessary. They are upholding something. And that the view is they have an important perspective even if I only agree with parts. I may be more sensitive to this thing, but I recognize being sensitive to this part is important. And this is both not only respect, but there's a sense of admiration. And so we've kind of divided up the polarized world into kind of categories. And these first 3 versus these 2, the story we tell is that to be a moderator, it's the Better Angels organization says you got to be down here, and they make sure that they find people who are in this category and kind of screen out anybody that's up here because that's not going to work. Now I thought about this a little bit. This is that was a thumbnail of the opening lecture I did at the last meeting, and I thought about this a little bit. And I thought about these 3, like what's going on here? What's the difference between these 3 and here, other than just the intensity of the emotion? There's more going on, I think. And I think it's a result of a natural tribalizing political kind of energies that we've seen. And to do that, I want to describe and to explain what I mean. I want to describe the something called the 3 Languages of Politics. That is a book written by Arnold Kling, who's out of MIT. And very interesting. Oh, Julie, I need a writer. Okay, here. He had a very interesting way of just dividing up the way we talk about politics. And he said that there's three basic value dimensions. That you can be strong in one, strong in the other, and it clearly maps to three basic, fairly distinct political parties. And I'm going to describe them here for you. So the value dimension here, what that means is this side is good, this side is bad. So there is a political party, and I didn't write the name, but you're all going to be able to guess. Their concern is for the oppressed, the poor, the disadvantaged, those that have historically been marginalized. A key concern or sensitivity is to fairness. And the worst, so that's good. For those people, the worst thing is to be aligned with the oppressors, power structures, hierarchical power structure, moneyed interests. By the way, moneyed, M-O-N-E-Y-E-D, is the correct spelling these days. It used to be M-O-N-I-E-D. I looked it up, and it was in the 18th century it was that. Now it has changed. Because I couldn't believe that was right. It looked like monkey. But anyway, so this obviously is, I'll put a big P here, for progressive. I'm avoiding the word liberal because liberals like been so messed up in terms of what it actually means that progressive, I think, is a little more accurate for people who have a high sensitivity for fairness and concern for the oppressed and liberation from oppression, and have a great kind of antipathy toward oppressors and power structures and things like that. You hear all about patriarchy and all these things go on. People who are sensitive to sexism, racism, all that kind of stuff, this is where they are. They're in this dimension. Now there's another dimension, which is where there's a concern for individual liberty and choice, freedom. That's they're strongly sensitive to that, and they're aligned with, they're worried about in terms of the worst sin. This is good, this is bad. The worst sin, what I said, or bad, is being aligned with expanding government, coercive control over the individual. Okay, that's the worst thing for those people. Okay, this is kind of your libertarian types, on the red side, a more libertarian type. And it doesn't mean that if you're not sensitive here that you don't believe liberty is important. It's just that's not a hot button issue for you. And it doesn't mean that if you're strongly strongly sensitive to individual liberty and choice, doesn't mean that you don't care about fairness. But there is but this is what lights your light, so to speak. Then there's the concern for civilizing institutions, traditions, norms, what is valuable about the culture. That's what's good. What they're worried, what they consider bad, if you're on this dimension, is anything that's going to be undermining the norms and traditions. For lack of a better word, just sort of like the barbarians are at the gates, and that they're tearing down what is good about our culture, in their words, and that's generally, and it's a good word, it's conservative. And the interesting thing here is that our tribal politics, this next sentence is what I kind of woke up realizing, that our tribal politics pushes us to overvalue our sensitivity and to look at people who have different sensitivities as if they were in the negative box of their group. So, for example, this is kind of, I put this way. Ta-da! Wasn't that cool? I didn't want Julie to see it. I said, I want to be a surprise. It's like our tribal politics puts us into groups. We've talked about this before. We want to be a good member of our tribe. And to do that, let's say if we're in the progressive tribe, we carry the flag, liberate from oppression. That's what we see. And all of our group is with us. And we want to be a good member of that. And what we see when we see other groups, we don't see them talking about individual liberty. We don't see them talking about preserving what's good in civilization. We see them as oppressors. We see them as being unconcerned about fairness or the poor. And so when you cast them in that light, of course they're bad. Of course they're deluded. Of course they are deserving of pity. Of course they should be hated. And in the same way, when you have, the conservatives, they're big on, what's going to keep our traditions. They're ruining our culture, the culture war, blah, 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 all these things. They're encouraged to overvalue this, and then when they look to others, they're seeing the barbarians at the gates. They want to change the definition of marriage. They want to change the definition of this. They want to undermine our religious values, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And the same thing for libertarians down here. They will be oversensitive to this, and they're going to see people who are trying to create an authoritarian, totalitarian, socialist world where everything is controlled by government. Okay? And that's what they're going to see. And the great truth that is missed here, and this is the conclusion, the great truth is that we are what is called, what has been named, value pluralists. We're not single-minded value. The media and our political tribal kind of energies are pushing us to think only in one dimension. And instead, there's nothing wrong with being concerned about fairness and oppressed and for poor, and still think about individual liberty, or still value things in, and seeing that, oh yeah, the other group is caring about this. They're not oppressors. This is what they're caring about. That's what their sensitivity is. And that having this as was, I think, Arnold Kling's great contribution, is by having this orientation, it's a lot easier to talk to somebody, if you know they're in another tribe, to talk to them about what they care about. Because, if I care about fairness, it's like I can easily talk to a libertarian by framing what, in terms of basic liberty. You want to be able to, these people deserve liberty too. These people that are oppressed, they also value and benefit from cultural norms and traditions, etc. Anyway, so that's. You can stop.
We can clap now. That was great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Could you reference one more of the fellow that you got this from? Somebody Kling. What was his name?
Arnold Kling, and it was called The Three Languages of Politics. It's an e-book. You can get it from Amazon for like $2. But it's the idea here is, I said this today because in our conversations we can recognize when we're coming from which of these particular sensitivities. And then if we can recognize, but I can be sensitive to all of these things, and still my peculiar one, my particular one, I guess I should say, I can give a little favor to, but I'm not going to denounce. The whole point was, I don't need to hate or hold in disdain or pity someone who has another view, because they're just. They actually hold a view that very likely you value as well. That's why when you actually sit down and talk to somebody, you realize, oh yeah, I have. There's a lot of commonality here. Okay, so that's my song and dance for today.